Welcome, everyone. We are at this sacred moment, the equinox, the time of balance and new beginnings. This is the astrology year. So we astrologers celebrate our practice and honor our ancestors, those that have carved the way and also expanded the connection between earth and sky. I think we all agree astrology is an amazing gift. It is in a way a tool that was provided for us to help us understand our existence. You see, the most of the world is not aware that this tool is available. And yet, the more you dive into astrology, the more revealing it is, the richer it gets, deeper layers to navigate the cosmic riddles. So thank you for joining us today and being together on this special occasion. I think, like every birthday, like every celebration, it's an opportunity to recognize the existence, to not take it for granted. You know, we do not take astrology for granted, and we do not take astrologers who show up and do the work and provide the insights. So all this in one day, let's make it special. And I would like to use this opportunity to obviously share with you the astrologer's oath. So this basically captures in some words um, what we're about. And so I'll read it. You can read it yourself or listen. The infinity of the sky has cohesion. The astral planes reveal a logic to which nature fully resonates and aligns. If you are initiated in this art of interpretation, of celestial science with existential meaning, I am one. I recognize the privilege and responsibility to serve humanity as an astrologer, to be the channel between above and below. Remain grounded, clear of prejudice, and open-hearted, respectfully, gracefully, truthfully. I pledge to assist those who seek higher guidance, direct them to the space, the time, and the way, as it is depicted in the map of geocosmic cycles. I will enlighten them in the perspective that despite trials and tribulations, they live their lives are intrinsic to an intelligent cosmic order. These suggestions shall be made to the best of my humble understanding, whether venerated or depreciated publicly in this task. I shall not falter, aware of the merit of this honorable calling. Thank you. So, being an astrologer is a privilege. It's an amazing life. It's a privilege to have access to divine understanding and knowledge. But it's also a struggle because it's a responsibility, it's a heavy weight, but it is also so deeply misunderstood that we have to face so much resistance and prejudice. And yet here we are, we show up and we continue for us and for the next generation. Carry the torch, keep the fire burning. Never let the flame die out, but in all honesty, even if astrologers were to be silenced truth always prevails. I would like to honor today also an iconic astrologer, Lee Lehman, who passed away on the new moon on the 18th. I personally did not work closely with Lee, but I know that she was well respected and was part of the revival of traditional astrology, was a major figure in the horary astrology body of knowledge and teachings. So as she departed on this auspicious portal with the eclipses and the equinox and the new moon, she was born on a new moon in Virgo. She passes on a new moon in Pisces, and she was born with a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Libra, and she passes with a Saturn-Neptune in Aries. So there's always sacredness in timing. Nothing is random. The time we arrive is not random. The time we leave is not random. So thank you, Lee, and thank you all the astrologers who made significant contributions. Just a quick note before I pass the mic to our first speaker. I would like to just review, what is the equinox? Because we speak about it, but do we know what it is? So there are two circles in the sky, at least two. There are many more, but these are the main two that are very important to us astrologers. There is what we call the celestial equator. The celestial equator is the equator of the Earth that we extend into space. And then there's the path of the sun, which is called the ecliptic. So you see here, celestial equator and the ecliptic where all the signs are listed. So where the sun is the path of the sun. The ecliptic is divided into 12 parts, which are our astrology signs. And when these two planes are tilted at 23.5 degrees, and when they actually meet, when the sun is on that meeting point between the equator and the ecliptic, the sun is on the 0 Aries point in March or 0 Libra point in September. When they are at the extreme, when the sun is as far away from the celestial equator, that's in June and December, and that's when we have the solstice. That's why the lights are so different, short days and long days on the solstice, equal days on the equinox. So this is a time for reset, for seeding a completely new cycle, because the sun is our life force and centralizes everything. We also know that Saturn and Neptune are on this point now. So as the sun connects to the equinox, it is in good company. How does this look as far as the tilt of the Earth? You can see here the December solstice. The tilt is showing the southern hemisphere towards the sun. In the June solstice, the northern part of the globe is showing towards the sun, so it's summer in the northern hemisphere. And again, equal on the equinoxes, which basically brings the whole world together. Think about the fact that it's equal day and night everywhere, no matter where you are on the planet. So this is different from the solstice, which creates a lot of variation. Wherever you are is going to be a different amount of daylight and sunlight and nightlight. Now, another interesting point before, to complete this, is when you look at the globe, obviously the equator is the middle latitude. And then 23.5 north is the Tropic of Cancer. 23.5 south is the Tropic of Capricorn. So on June 21st, as the sun tilts, the Earth tilts at 23.5 degree maximum, if you are living or if you are visiting the Tropic of Cancer on the 21st of June, the sun will be exactly above your head. Same thing with the Tropic of Capricorn. If you travel on the Tropic of Capricorn on the 21st of December, you will have the sun above your head, and at noon, no shadow. So it's interesting that even though astronomers are telling us astrology is not relevant, they still call these latitudes tropics of Capricorn and Cancer. So maybe they do believe in astrology after all. This is the chart of the equinox. I will come back to it. And many astrologers use this chart as a prediction chart. It can describe the trends for the whole coming year. We do this for every season. So this is the chart for the next 3 months. But because it's the Aries equinox, we also use it for the whole year. So the Sun-Neptune conjunction and the ruler of Aries being Mars in Pisces in mutual reception with Neptune, it's going to flavor the whole year for us. And as you can see, we also have a new moon conjunct Venus. Now, Alexandra is going to start our first presentation today. She's going to talk about Chiron moving into Taurus. And you see Chiron is now at the tail end of Aries. It's moving into Taurus on the 19th of June on the solstice. And it's going to stay there for 8 years. So I want to introduce Alexandra. Many of you may not know her. She is a Swedish astrologer. And I had the privilege to meet Alexandra last month in Stockholm at our conference. And I was really impressed by her knowledge, but also presentation and professionalism. So I'm delighted that she agreed to be with us. I will just share a little bit. She's been studying astrology since 2008. Alexandra runs a podcast. If you know Swedish, and maybe there's also content in English, your English is really excellent, as you will hear her. And you can check her website, Alvis, with many articles, and you can always translate them with Google. So she wrote many different publications, podcasts, and presents workshops with astrology and yoga immersion. I do that too, so we're definitely running parallel lines here. She holds a bachelor degree in social psychology and a yoga teaching certification for Hatha, Vinyasa, and Kundalini. Now, what was also interesting is that Alexandra, like me, is a Cancer rising with a Gemini moon. There were 3 of us, and we had a lot to talk about. So, Alexandra, thank you. you can unmute yourself and I'll stop sharing.
Sure. Thank you so much, Maurice. What a great presentation. I am very honored and very happy to be here on this equinox and to share this community with other astrologers and astrology interested people. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for specifically my Swedish followers who are here to support me today. Let's get into it now. We are running a little bit over time, but I will try to keep my 20 minutes. I do have a lot of information, but I'll do my best. And Maurice, please let me know if I go too much over time, okay? Let me know if anything disappears, or if you will let me know. So what I will speak about is Chiron in Taurus, or Chiron's ingress into Taurus. Let's jump right into it. So let's first speak a little about Chiron himself, because his birthday is coming up here in November of 2027. Chiron was discovered in November 1977, and Chiron actually is a sort of mix of it's not really a planet, it's not really an asteroid, but it's a planetary body that moves between Saturn and Uranus and has quite a unusual way of moving. So he spends different amount of time in each sign. So he has been in Aries since 2018, and we will speak a bit more about that. But he will move for the first time here into Taurus for a short while between the 19th of June and 19th of September. So it's his first dipping his toes into the sign of Taurus and presenting the possible themes that we will experience individually and globally in our lives due to him moving into Taurus and activating the themes of that sign. So whatever happens between the 19th of June and 19th of September in the world and in your life will also represent the rest of the period that Chiron spends in Taurus, which will be from April 2027 all the way until 2034. So we have about 7 years that we will have Chiron in Taurus. Now, what's interesting with the Chiron movement into Taurus is that he will actually go over the first degree of Taurus and several times. So it will be very much activated, the first specifically degree of Taurus, because Chiron will be retrograde over that point 2 times. The first time will be during the summer when he backs from the first degree of Taurus back into Aries during autumn 2026. Then he will spend some time in Aries. He will go again into Taurus during 2027 and then back in his retrograde motion all the way up to the first degree of Taurus again during the switch between 27 and 2028. So that means, guys, for you that have any planets in the fixed signs of Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius, you will be especially affected by Chiron's movement basically from now when it happens in June, and then again throughout 2026, 27, and beginning of 2028. That is especially relevant for you who have planets, any planet, in the first to fifth degree of Taurus, the sign of Taurus. It could also affect you who is ruled by Venus. So if you have your ascendant in Libra or ascendant in Taurus, or have maybe a very prominent Venus in your chart, you know, Venus conjunct your moon, or you have many planets in Libra and Taurus, you will also be more affected by this transit of Chiron into the sign of Venus. Last time Chiron spent time in Taurus was 77 to 84, so he was discovered in 77, so it's pretty prominent that he's coming back for the first time since he has been discovered to the sign where he was when he was discovered. Now he did spend some time in Taurus also between 1927 and 1934, but we did not know about that yet. So I do speak and take that into consideration, but mostly this transit is so important because it really marks the first Chiron return since he has been discovered. Now Chiron usually is connected to the sign of Sagittarius because of his symbolic connection to the Centaur or Centaur. And that is true. He is strong in Sagittarius. Also, we say that Chiron is true in Virgo. But since he was in Taurus when he was discovered, we also think that he is quite strong and prominent in the sign of Taurus as well. Also, if you are born during these years, especially 77 or 27, maybe you have some relatives who are, you are up for your Chiron return, and it starts a little bit this year, and then it will continue from April 2027. And during those years he is in Taurus, he will give your Chiron return to you if you're born between these years. So when we look at the Chiron archetype, I think everybody knows him as the wounded healer, which is completely correct. And I will run through a few things that Chiron is connected to in our charts and symbolically. So he is the teacher and the healer. Now Chiron is he's a child of Saturn, but he was so-called bastard child. So he was not acknowledged as the true child of Saturn. And he had a half brother, Jupiter. So he had to be hidden from his parents and from his father, the great Saturn, specifically because he was a bastard. So he spent most of his upbringing, his childhood, in the dark parts of a cave. He would share this cave with Jupiter, but Jupiter got the sunny, the open part of the cave, and Chiron had to be hidden from everyone. So that created this wound of abandonment. So Chiron represents also abandonment. And he also had this wound throughout his life that he got from Hercules that he was not able to heal. So he had to live with this pain and this suffering. And from that, he became the teacher because he wanted to understand how he could heal himself. So he was very good with the herbs, any form of medicine. He was a master of the arts, all the natural sciences, because he wanted to find a remedy to be able to live with his wound and his pain. For that reason, Chiron has a deep connection to wisdom, broad knowledge, and to nature's knowledge. So anything that has to do with shamanism, shamanic knowledge, anything that has to do with, herbs and how we use natural remedies is very connected to Chiron, which is a prominent theme for Chiron in Taurus as well. Basically, you have this holistic sort of access through Chiron to how to heal your human being through your body, through the mind, through the instinct and intellect. Because where Chiron is in our charts and in that sign, that is where he brings and opens up that wound, that pain, that suffering. And it's not that we are able to completely heal it, because that's not the point of Chiron. It's not to heal the wound. It's to learn to develop through that pain and use that pain in order to help yourself and help others to live the best life you can live, although you do have that awful strong pain. So we never get rid of the pain with Chiron. We just find ways and remedies and wisdom to work with it and to use it to our own and others' development. So Chiron is also the balance between the physical and the spiritual, because in the spiritual world, there is no suffering. But as soon as you land into the physical body, you will suffer. And that is the point of our main development in life, to have some of that pain and suffering. For that reason, we need to accept all the sides of being a human, meaning you will suffer, you will have the bad, the good, and the ugly. That's just the existence of the human being. And having that wisdom and knowledge that Chiron brings to us will help us to navigate those difficult parts of life that are suffering. So both suffering and a healer. That's the basic, connection to Chiron. And when you have suffered, when you have learned to heal, overcome, then you're able to bring that to others and also help others. So people who usually have a prominent Chiron in their chart, conjunction Sun, Moon on the ascendant, other planets, they are natural healers. They came here to heal. But unfortunately, that happens through suffering. So these people also do suffer in their lifetime, but they have the capacity to find the tools to remedy that suffering. So Chiron will be our personal growth, the key. It will be the insight to our vulnerability. It will be our main development through pain and suffering, as I said. And in the collective world, when he is in a sign, he shows the pain points of the collective at a specific time in history. When he switches signs, especially like he will do now, or when he is especially conjunct other planets. So we see some sort of healing crisis. We also see areas or places in the collective where systems have to break down because there's too much suffering, or the systems create suffering, and that gives us the possibility to evolve and to become better and build stronger systems and structures. So we have had Chiron in the sign of Aries between 2018 and 2027. So Chiron will finally leave Aries in 2027. The ruler of Aries is Mars, and Aries is all about existence, the spark of life, the birth of a child, the right to live or die. That's Aries. That's why Aries fights so hard, because either you fight and live or you die. It's very black and white with Aries. So the archetypes and suffering or pain and healing we have been going through has been a lot about existing in the world as who you are, in being comfortable and confident in that, in allowing other people to be that as well, without conflicts and war and death. Unfortunately, the collective works on a broader scale, so we have seen a rise in death in armed conflicts. You can see it on this scale here. So approximately from 2018, you can see this huge rise in conflicts in the world. And that is during the time that Chiron has been in Aries. Also, we have seen a big decrease in birth rate, 8.6% globally since 2018. And 2018, 2023, 2024 have the lowest birth rate globally since we started recording that in the late 1800s. So that for me is sort of one of the mirrorings of Chiron in Aries, where we feel like, is it safe for me to exist? Is it safe for me to give birth? Is this world a safe place for life? Hopefully we have done some sort of healing around that. We will be able to see that when Chiron is finished in Aries. And the healing that we can do around these things comes from action, concrete action. That is for your individual life, that is for the collective. Take action upon these questions. Do not be afraid, have courage, and do it. Whatever you want and need to do that expresses who you are. Now, what happens when Chiron will move into Taurus? Now we have bit of a different theme here, because Chiron in Taurus will be ruled by the beautiful Venus, the beautiful Aphrodite. So in one sense, that will be less dramatic than it was in Aries, meaning there will be less blood spilled, hopefully around this transit. And we will maybe find healing through relating, and through peace and love, sort of like 69 all over again, and maybe through demonstrating or showing that we want peace above all. But on the general level for Taurus, whatever we will see when it comes to the wisdom we gain, the pain we experience, and the healing that is possible will be around security and resources. Because if the Aries is about survival and actually death or life, Taurus is all about, okay, I am surviving. I don't have, any issues with like dying right now. But do I have the resources that I need for that? Do I have food, shelter? Do I have, electricity now in our modern world? Can I charge my phone or my Tesla? Can I go to the grocery store and buy the products? Are the shelves filled in the grocery store? Are the money that I have in my hands actually worth anything so I can buy something in the grocery store? So whatever we'll feel in sort of like suffering and insecurities will be in regards to these themes that are our basic needs, which is actually quite scary. So the basic stuff, as I said, also more general things that can be affected, agriculture, food systems, deliveries of food, the weather system that will affect agriculture as well, or might affect it. Definitely the economy, the currencies, and the sort of insecurity we have in those systems, because we have seen during Uranus time in Taurus, also since 2018, he's almost done in Taurus. We see and have seen that the money have been an issue. Economical systems and structures have not been working so well. Things are more expensive. You have, the stock market is not doing very well. So this is something that will continue with Chiron in Taurus. It will continue Uranus disruption in the economic system, and either Chiron will bring it down completely and help us build new structures and systems, or we will be able to heal it in a not such a disruptive way. We will see. Now, in a personal level, Chiron is all about values and what is important to you in Taurus, obviously. So it will be a big re-evaluation for the individual and for the collective. So do we value cheap products because we don't have any money? Or do we value the future of the earth? So maybe we will save up some money and not go on a shopping spree. Do we value working for someone else, or maybe having our little house and growing our own vegetables? Do we value being online or actually relating to people through the body and through meetings? So hopefully as a collective, we will reevaluate quite a lot of these things that are hurting us right now. So some probable scenarios for what could this transit could affect. Climate crisis, obviously, because Taurus is tightly connected to natural resources. Water, products, food being more scarce. As I said, changes in the economy and stock market. We can have a crisis in the beauty market as well. Looking at all the, things you can do today to your face and to your body. We have the Kardashians that are showing themselves in a very, changed state, and many women follow that. So women and beauty and, how we view women will probably be also under effect here. Digital finances, issues with sustainability, The loneliness epidemic might become more painful because we're so disconnected from each other. And Taurus is all about connection, connection to your body, connection to the physical realm, connection to each other, connection to food, nature. You know, Taurus is here to touch, feel, smell, and taste. So when we dissociate, we feel the suffering and the pain coming from Chiron in Taurus, when we dissociate from our body and from each other. Also related things related to food, so obesity might be on the rise, diabetes, sugar problems, problems with how we, like, why do we even have white sugar if it's not good for our health? Things that can get impacted as well can be hormonal issues with Venus and Taurus, and also how plastics and other unnatural factors affect our hormonal system and our general system. Now that does sound quite dark and gloomy, so let's see where we can have potential healing here instead. How shall we approach and meet this potential crisis? So we need to open our heart chakras and sacral chakras. That's where the healing and love will be for Chiron in Taurus. While in Aries we had to work on our root chakra, on our stability and our safety in the world, survival. Here we have to work through the sacral and through the heart, an open heart where we actually see each other, meet each other, help each other. Anything from a plant to an animal to a human being, if you just can stop for a second, a minute, and be there for that animal, plant, or human with your energy, that will be healing from Chiron in Taurus. Also, working with nature again, coming back to nature, coming back to our roots, essentially, because we knew everything about nature back in the days. We knew exactly what we could eat or use for medicine, what was toxic or not. We used nature's element to build this world we live in, but we have forgotten that we are a part of nature, and now we live so disconnected from it. So Chiron and Taurus might bring quite a lot of pain around the fact that we are not using nature's element. I mean, everything is made from, plastic or polyester. You don't usually use wood and wool and fur and things like that. So that would be very important.
So,
Also,
Alexandra,
yeah,
just a quick question. We have to close, but I was wondering about one of the things you say regarding fashion and beauty and
yeah,
then nature. This can also apply to the textiles and the materials that we use in our fashion.
yes, yes, exactly. Coming back to the natural things. So since we don't have so much more time, I will show you the last slide. Or actually, I had some more, but um, previously, when we had Chiron and Taurus, we did have the Great Depression, and we had some economical crisis also in the 70s. So that would be quite prominent for Chiron and Taurus as well. So be prepared for a shift in the economics. What I want to show you before I leave the word to someone else is what can you do? Now, this is what I want you to see. So we spoke a little bit about this, but please have a look here. Picking organic, natural things, picking quality, because Taurus is all about long-lasting quality. So instead of fast things, please invest in tree, invest in good materials, invest in organic food. It will cost more, but it will be so much worth it for your body and your energy and for the healing of the world and of the nature. Be very careful in the stock market while Chiron is in Taurus. You will not know how it will go. I did say to connect to other people. not consuming as much. And the most important thing, have a look at your values. Why are you living this life? What are you doing with this life? What is important to you? Have a list. This is why I live. If it's, nature, music, and relationships on top of that list, why are you spending your time working 10 hours? Or why are you spending your time scrolling or doing whatever? If you keep an eye on your values, you will be able to process and transform this pain you will experience into healing, and then we can heal together. So let's do that. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. I wish I had more time.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. This was very relevant and eye-opening. And yeah, moving from nature and this message of coming back to our ancestral connection with the earth, being in the body, we now invite Margareta, who's going to speak to us about the Northern traditions. And I want to share, your description. It was really beautiful. Just one moment here. So just to introduce Margareta first, also a fellow astrologer from Sweden, from Stockholm, with 25 years of experience as an astrologer, giving personal consultations, writing and teaching astrology, very prominent in Sweden. And she has an astrology shop still in physical form where you can actually go in and get readings. And that's in the center of Stockholm, which is, an amazing thing for the visibility of astrology. I know that you've thought about using the space for something else, but even lasting until now is quite amazing. So Margareta is organizing conferences in Sweden and bringing the community together, the local community of Swedish astrologers, but also the whole Scandinavian and international community. Her conferences are in English, so everyone can easily participate. She is also the Swedish satellite for the Organization of Professional Astrology. So, as she said, the best thing I know is to receive people for personal meeting in my cozy premises in Gamlestan in Stockholm, which is the old city. And so Margareta is going to speak today about astrology under the midnight sun. The people of the North lived a deeply nature-oriented worldview. Their worldview was inhabited by gods and other beings, the Desir, female ancestral spirit, elves, land spirit, and the ever-present ancestors. At the center of their cosmology was the Yggdrasil, the world tree. I'm sure she's going to pronounce it correctly, but I am practicing my Swedish, which connects heaven and earth and the underworld into living cosmic structure. So people who live so closely with the rhythm of the sky and the sea, it is difficult to imagine that they would not also have developed a calendar rooted in the rhythm of the heavens. We do not have evidence they practice astrology in a technical sense, but their lives were clearly synchronized with the movement of the sun and the changing season. And so this really emerges from what Alexandra was sharing about Chiron in Aries. The mic is yours, Margareta. Thank you.
So, hello, everybody. As Maurice so beautifully told you, I am all about sharing astrology with people because I think that our country, Sweden, is underdeveloped when it comes to astrology. So I'm so happy that me and Alexandra, we have the chance to be here in one international gathering because I want Sweden to reach up to a higher level so we can speak astrologic freely as people does in every other country. But okay, this is not the subject of the today. And also referring back to what Maurice said, I just had a Venus transit. So guess what? This Monday, I sold my shop in Gamla Stan for a very good deal. And I also, the same day, signed a contract with Bonnier. So I'm going to write a book. And yeah, it's going to be a beginner's book in astrology, and it haven't been published as such a book for at least 30 years. So it's going to be, that's my great news of my Venus on Venus. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Congratulations. Beautiful.
Thank you. And I'm starting with this beautiful picture here of this Stonehenge. And as we see, this photo is taken on an equinox. And yeah, I'm thinking that we, Western astrology, we knows that everything begins here at this point at 0 degrees Aries. And at the moment when the day and the night are at the same length, in the perfect balance. And yeah, here we are in the astrology day. So happy astrology day, everybody. Here the light turns. Here the light regains the strength and the world begins to breathe again. The cardinal points, spring, autumn, summer, and winter, are the cosmic gateways. They occur simultaneously across the entire Earth and hold us together in a shared rhythm. The sun and the moon, they move in their orbits and shapes in time itself, and above us stretches the sky, the planets, and the stars, the moment, which we interpret through an astrological tradition that came from the Middle East. The astrology originated in Babylon and developed around the Mediterranean. But what happens when astrology meets a sky that does not behave the way we are taught? Because all the astrological systems they are calculated from the Mediterranean point of view. So what do we do when the sun don't go set, when the sun don't rise? I mean, here in the north, where I am from, we are living in extreme circumstances. Check it out. We see that Alexandria in Egypt are on the 30-degree north, and Rome, New York, Madrid, they are all in the 40 north latitude. But we know that here up around the Arctic, we are on the 60-degree. So how do we interpret our astrology then? How shall we do it? I would like to bring you to the north, to the Arctic regions above the polar circle, because here everything changes. Here, where the long cold winters without light, where human beings live in constant darkness. But this is, oh, actually here, it's Midnattssolen, the land of the midnight sun. And I am born here in this city, Kiruna. So I'm born in the 68-degree north. So it's quite high up and a very, very different climate from, yeah. Here we can see a picture of the midnight sun and how it could look. here we have the magical light present all around the clock. Here, the elements are not symbols, they are conditions. The fire, the cold, the wind, and the water, they are forces that must be lived and understood and be managed. This shaped a different relationship to time. For the Nordic people, the year did not consist only of the cardinal point and the 4 seasons, but of 8 sacred festivals. The midpoint between solstice and equinox were held clear rituals and religious significance, where gods, females, ancestor spirits, and ancestors was honored. At these times, offerings was made in something called blut. And blut, of course, it's blood in English. So it's the same word. And when I speak about this Nordic tradition, we can also see that this is the founding of the Western society, because in the end, we are from the same. Blut was a religious ritual in which the animals were sacrificed. The meat was prepared and it was shared in the meal together. By eating the animal, one partook the strength of that animal. So in a worst case scenario, when you really needed help, you could maybe offer a horse and kill the horse and eat it to gain the strength and to go to war and to win. So here I have a picture of, I don't know what it's called, Aura Borealis maybe, or
Northern Light.
Northern Light. Yeah, okay, thank you. Norrsken in Swedish. Okay, so here ChatGTP have made for me a wheel. That's this wheel, unfortunately, was wrong because it's supposed to be the opposite, that we in astrology have it the other way around, but doesn't matter. We are now here at this point, the spring equinox. The northern people, they were celebrating, and in Sweden we do it until this day, in the 15th degree, in the midpoint, or it's not really true that it's the 15th degrees. Chat made that for me. It can be between the 10th and the 15th, because it's not so stable as we think, because the Nordic people, they did not, they were not skilled in astrology, but anyhow, they knew the shiftings, and what is now the 30th of April, and that is 10 degrees Taurus. Nej, yeah. We celebrate Valborg or Valpurgis. I don't know how to say. So what we do is that we light fires and we go out and we celebrate. This is a time to you greet the spring. Next great season, of course, it's the midsummer, and I think as Swedes, we are really famous for the summer solistic and the midsummer party. This midsummer party, it's had a great significance because this was the only way to be sure that your child should survive the winter. It's to be pregnant in these days. So it's a fertility party that you celebrate to the god Frey and Freya, and ideal for lovemaking and celebrate the summer. Later on, we have, this is the most uncertainty, because, you know, when the Christians came, they tried to take away our hedonic traditions, and they tried to make something else. So I don't know, or nobody knows the true name of what it was before, but it was in the 15 degrees of Leo, it was a harvest festivity. And then at the autumn equinox, it's also 0 degrees Libra, of course, and it's to the goddess of Freya. Alva, it's they write it wrong here. Alva Blut, it's the old Swedish elves, and Blut, of course. And this is what, of course, nowadays is the Halloween. But these have traditions since long time. In the Alva Blood, we were speaking to the ancestors, the Disir, to the unseen realms were honored. This was a quiet and inward time, of course, since it was connected to Scorpio. And the magic of this, I think, is so interesting how the Vikings and the Nordic people were engaging. I mean, if you follow the Nordic wheel, I mean, you can see clearly that it's connected to astrology. But how did they know that when they didn't have any knowledge of astrology? I just wonder how. So it's like my idea is that if you are living so close to the nature, you can see the shiftings, you can feel it inside you. So astrology, it's a lived astrology we had, even though we were not astrologers. Then, of course, the winter solstice in here, it's of course the darkest point of the year. And at the same, the midwinter blut, it was the most important festival, and that, of course, was later on changed to be the birth of Jesus Christ. But in the original version, this blut, it was kind of massacre, and they were really using the blood and throwing it on the wall, putting it on themselves. And so the red color of Christmas is coming from this midwinter blut. And it was this the praying and the asking the nature to give us back the sun. And then the last point I would like to talk about is what's called Disablut. The Christian people later on, they wanted to take it away, of course, and they said that it's a religious thing, but it's in nowadays it's called the candle mass. But Disabluten, it's exactly the midpoint between I cannot speak. It's between spring and midwinter. And at this point, it's the 2nd of February. You can see, you can clearly feel it that you have halfway. And if you lived to that day here in the north, it was a great chance of survival. So it's a very happy day and a grateful day. This wheel of the year does not only mark time, it describes a lived relationship to the cosmos. Side by side with the Norse people also lived the Sami. And the Sami people, they are, we can say, the Indians of the North or something, because they are not from the same culture of us. They have different culture, different tradition, but also they are counting with 8 seasons, and they are also talking about exactly the same date, because you can feel it here. The Sami people, they say that on the 2nd of February, you can for the first time see the sun come back in the top of the mountain, even if it's just a short minute. It's a change. It's a great change. And also for the Sami people, this is a gratitude. Yes, the light is coming back even to us. Of course, there are great similarities between us, the Nordic people, and the Celtic people, and maybe this is the foundation and the ground of the Western thinking. Of course, the Western society also is greatly influenced from the Mediterranean, but somewhere we met. But it's difficult to say which of the tradition that came first, or if they emerge independently from observing the same sky. But perhaps that is the point. When people live so close to the rhythm of the nature, a similar patterns tend to appear. The Norse people were also very, very skilled. Oh, here we have some Sami people. I want you to see how beautiful they are in their festivity clothes. And they are living on the very, very north of the Arctic, and they are living so connected to their reindeers. But the Norse, they were also seafarers. They traveled across the open sea, often without land in sight, without a compass, and without maps in the modern sense. They navigated from the sky. They went as far as to the Americas many hundred years or thousand years before the Americas was discovered, and they came back. There are many evidence of that. They traveled to Turkey and they come back. And the sun gave them direction during the day. Its rising, its path, its setting provided orientation, but it was the night sky that made the long distance journeys possible. That was one point that didn't move. Polaris, of course, the northern star. The Polaris mark the true north and lies very close to the celestial pole. While the rest of the stars appear to rotate, the Polaris always remain almost still. By locating Polaris, one could orient oneself regardless of location. It is found in the constellation of Ursa Minor, or the Little Bear, and together these stars form one of the most fundamental navigation systems in history. This was not symbolic language, it was practical. It was about finding the direction and ultimately to find the way back home. And now I'm here. I took a picture. In Iceland, they have from calcite, the Iceland spar, they made this was called the sunstone, because even though it was clouds and you couldn't see the sun, if you look through this stone, you could see the sun anyways, because it's an optic thing. Here's another picture of the same. And here you see the condition of a modern seafarer with the northern light there. Okay, I would like to come to where I'm about to go with this speech, because and here an important question arises. We as astrologers work with system based on the movement of the sky, but they are often assumed that this movement looks the same everywhere. It doesn't. If you think about it, all the astrological systems are made in the Mediterranean by monks and people who studied, but they never thought about that we are going to sit here in the north and calculate charts. So recently, last week it was, I met a young Dutch woman who told me that she learned from TikTok that it's impossible to use Placidus or another house system in Northern Europe. And that was very interesting news because, of course, it's working very, very well. But this girl, she told me that it's common knowledge these days that the whole sign, it's the only house system that can be used in the north, and that ain't right. It's an oversimplification that is clearly spread but not correct. In the large part of Europe, including Sweden, multiple house systems work perfectly well. The problem arises when you reach high altitudes. At these altitudes, the geometry of the sky changes significantly. The angle of the ecliptic in the relation to the horizon become extreme, and some houses may become very large while others shrink and more or less disappear in certain house systems. The guideline I have learned is that equal house should be used when you are around 65 degrees of northern latitude. My own experience by people from the north, I'm thinking that already on the 62nd, the system start to be unstable, and you can see it very clearly here. The Arctic Circle, it starts at 66 degrees. Professional software such as SolarFire and AstroGold is automatically pushing you to use equal house when you are calculating a northern horoscope. But I have one example for you here. I met this girl recently, and she agreed for me to use her chart as an example. So here we see her. If we are thinking that she's born the 26th of April 2001 at 6:51, if I put her horoscope in Lund, the south of Sweden, she will have Gemini rising, and her horoscope's looking quite normal. We can see that the 6th and the 12th house are wider and well. But now, here is where she is really born. She's born in Hudiksvall in real life. And we can see that the ascendant then is on 27, so it moved 20 degrees, even though it's the same time of birth. And we see that the houses get so small here. But what if she was born at Kiruna, where I'm born? Then we can see that the houses are so small that it's not really working out very well. Last May, I think he put it out nicely. He said that if it were such a thing as a perfect house system, we shouldn't need 40 of them. And I think that's clear. And perhaps this is where we need to reconsider, not in the terms in which is the universal correctly, but in terms of which sky we are actually interpreting. Because when we move to the north, into the world of the midnight sun and the winter darkness, it's not only the light that changes, it's the very conditions of the astrology change with it. So two people can be born in exactly the same moment, but if one person is born in Rome or one in Kiruna, the planets are in the same position, the zodiac identical, but the house will be totally different. So it means that the life is structured differently, experience distributed differently, same sky, but different stage. astrology is so not only about time, it's also about place. It's a meeting between the cosmos and the exact point on Earth where you stand. So here in the north, the sky do not behave the way astrology was built to accept. The sun does not set, or it barely rises, and still we live here. So the question is not which house system is right, it's about how we choose to meet the sky and how it actually appears where we are. And that's all what I had to say. So bye-bye and thank you.
Thank you, Margareta. And you bring a very important point that astrology was developed in the Middle East. So the discrepancy with the Arctic people and also with the Southern Hemisphere people. The whole structure of the chart is a North Hemisphere point of view.
Mm.
So one question about your reference to the tree. How is the tree, the Yggdrasil,
Yes,
fitting into the wheel?
uh, I was originally thinking to speak about the sun and the moon and the Yggdrasil, but I skipped that because I didn't want to pass over my 20 minutes.
Okay.
So that's a story I will tell you at another occasion, and I will do it happily.
Thank you so much. And I met, the Nordic population in one of my trip. And indeed, what I noticed, you talked about the blut and the sacrifices, is that people who live in the northern latitude cannot grow food easily. The agriculture is very limited. So the reliance on animals is almost total. And that's an eye-opener in, again, understanding not just the sky, but culture and life.
I think that you have to live it to understand under how extreme it is with the nature and how fragile the life could be.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing your world to the rest of the world. And congratulations on this new phase of your life. And
Yes.
you, as an Aries, you were a child of midsummer.
Yes, I was made in the midsummer or around that point, but actually it must be 1 month later. I have made a child myself in midsummer, and he was born on the 19th of March. So it's how it goes, 9 months.
Beautiful. Until next time. And we welcome now Kathryn, who's going to introduce us to the transits of the time, particularly the mighty Pluto in Aquarius, and soon to join Uranus in Gemini. So I would like to introduce Kathryn, who's a professional consulting astrologer, licensed massage therapist, sharing 25 plus years of experience combining stars and health. Offers a unique fusion of astrology and massage therapy, energy healing, and relaxation for deep transformation. You can visit her website, kathrynandren.com. And now I want to share also that Kathryn, some of you may know, we did a recent fundraiser, and we spoke about Angela Tiki losing a big part of her home to a flood. And at the same time, a week later, Kathryn lost her house to a fire. And, a devastating experience. interestingly, with the flood, Neptune was in Pisces. With the fire, Neptune had moved into Aries that same week. So they are in their own sacrifice, and Angela's going to speak tomorrow, capturing this fire-water transition. So you can imagine that it's a tremendous effort to resurrect, to birth yourself again through this Aries portal. If you'd like to support Kathryn, you can schedule a reading and check her services on her website. So blessings to you on this next phase, Kathryn, and
Thanks so much for having me here, Maurice.
we look forward to hearing the download, because what another interesting point is that, if I may share,
please, it's Uranus and Gemini coming up, so let's spill it.
And so your sun is conjunct Uranus in Libra.
Yes.
And electrifying what you touch. Blessings. The mic is yours.
Thank you so much. I do have a program here, Maurice, so let's make sure we get that. My name is Kathryn Andren, and Andren is a Swedish name. So I have not met the two other presenters who just started sharing, but I do, I am grateful to say we have some connection here. Today, I would like to begin with a brief meditation, because we're in this threshold of moving from the Pisces vibration into the Aries vibration. Before I jump in and get started, as a good Tai Chi master, we're going to roll back a little bit before we go forward. So wherever you are, just imagine that you, right now, you are seated on top of the world. Wherever you are, let's take a few full breaths together. And remember that breath is the energy that brings us life. And as we're celebrating and honoring this new life of the light and the sun, let us bring new life and energy into the body through our breath. Breath is the energy that connects and interconnects us, and it fills our hearts and animates the love that we share. And in the spirit of that sharing, I'd like to just call on the gift of grace, that grace is present with us here, and grace is around us, among us, and that whatever happens in our time together, may it be for the most benevolent outcome for us all. Great. So innovation and inspiration is our topic for today. One of the things that I love about astrology, what's something that really stands out for me about why I love astrology, and I've been studying, practicing, and teaching astrology almost half my life. 2026 is kind of an important year for me, because it's literally the halfway mark. I've been practicing astrology since 2000. And I met Maurice when we were both residents of Hawaii Island. Once upon a time, many moons ago, I lived in Hawaii, year 2000 to 2015, and Maurice held a conference called the River of Stars, and one of his presenters is Rick Tarnas. And I made sure that I got to that conference in part because of the book that I had, Rick Tarnas's book, which is this thick, and it's called Cosmos and Psyche. And I read this book, and it's pretty thick, but one of the things that I love about it is that he creates and reveals the correlation between what in the world is going on in our sky story, and how that connects in world events, and on an astrologer, how that also connects in our own internal world and our internal landscape. And I love how the two presenters started off with speaking about being in the body, right? As well as looking at astrology as a way to connect with nature. So my topic today is with Uranus and Pluto, and as a theme or a current for the year 2026, Uranus moves from Taurus into Gemini, coming right up for us here at the end of April. And through most of this year and into the early part of next year, there's a quiet hum. There's a song that's happening with Uranus and Pluto at the early degree of the air element. So we began with this meditation moment by focusing on the breath, and the cosmic conversation with Uranus and Pluto has in part to do with remembering that it's a year to really blow your mind. Okay, Uranus moving into Gemini. Gemini is the zodiac sign that looks like the Roman numeral 2. When we look at anything in Gemini, it's the planet or it's the zodiac sign that relates to understanding the rules and going beyond the rules. Gemini is the zodiac sign that says, let's wing it, okay? Uranus in Gemini has some flavor to do everything about what is happening now on this landscape with the new AI that's coming out, our new forms of communication. If we were to look back into 80 or 84 years or so, when Uranus was in Gemini during the Second World War, there were all kinds of new styles of communication that were coming out so that people could communicate with each other to navigate this timeline. So I wanted to just show as contrast, I'm saying changes in the air with Uranus and Pluto, all right? It's in the air signs. Uranus was moving into Gemini. Remember, Gemini is about teaching, talking, speaking, and communications. Pluto is currently in the zodiac sign of Aquarius. Aquarius has everything to do with about breaking free and going to new terrain, going to new territory, all right? So remembering that if you have planets and points at the early degrees of the air signs, all right, Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius, your chart is going to be sincerely ignited this year. We can't forget Libra. Gemini and Aquarius makes a trine to Libra. So if you are born on or near the eclipse, if you're born on or near the equinox time or the solstice timelines, plus or minus a couple of days, your chart is very much ignited this year in 2026. All right. So astrology is a lot about, we're talking, right? We're talking about something. However, how can we bring astrology and these conversations down to earth? All right, how can we bring them? And we're back. Disruptions. We're going to be talking about disruptions, okay? Uranus is the first of the outer planets. And as a reminder, whenever we see Uranus active and alive in a sky story, or we're looking at transits in your own personal birth chart, Uranus says, let's take it up to another level. Let's progress. Let's move forward. What is working? What is not working? If it's not working, it breaks, it cracks. It's time for what's new and what's next. I'm going to try this again. There we go. Uranus has everything to do with getting out of your comfort zone. So with Uranus moving into the zodiac sign of Gemini, my friends, this is a really important time and timeline to check your ideas and your belief systems. Interesting if true, what is happening? Is it real? Is it true? Uranus in Gemini says, I could do this or I could do that. Maurice mentioned I had a recent huge life change. And when the fire happened, there were so many people who reached out to me to support. And this, I'll tell you more about this story later, but the Uranus in Gemini has a lot to do with yes and, not either or. I got my mala beads in one hand and the rosary beads in the other hand, okay? So the gift of Uranus in Gemini is something to say about opening your mind to new possibilities, opening your mind to what's new, what's next, to really embrace and embody this cosmic conversation, or I could even call it the cosmic choir, all right? To hear this song and embrace their melody. There's the gift of stretching and moving and getting out of the comfort zone. Okay. I'm so sorry you can't see my screen, but that's fine. We'll carry on. Pluto is currently in the zodiac sign of Aquarius. Aquarius is correlated with Uranus in our modern Western astrology. So there's this double emphasis on freedom and breaking free and moving on into new territory and to new steps. Pluto in Aquarius is all about our capacity to connect with each other on other realms. So in 2020, when we had the crisis of COVID, many more and more people got on Zoom, and here we are connecting through the airwaves, right? So the gift of Pluto in Aquarius is about how we can deepen our connection, more and more with communities, even if it's people who are friends or friends of friends, even if it's people who are near and far, wherever we are, right? Pluto in Aquarius is about deepening the experience of understanding the new technologies that can elevate us for humanity. Now, whether you think AI is supportive or not, okay, it is here and it is accelerating at a rapid rate of speed. I met some new clients the other day, and they were telling me how excited they were when they put their birth information into the ChatGPT and it told them all about their horoscope. And I quietly cringed because I've practiced it on a couple of occasions. And even this morning, just even asking about the equinox, and they got it wrong. They generated a chart for the equinox, but it was from the equinox from last fall. So we have to absolutely, as we're moving forward in this timeline, know what we are looking at. Uranus in Gemini can be a little tricky, and Pluto in Aquarius says, let's move forward and let's move fast. So the gift of the timeline actually, in part, is about slowing down and inviting in the complementary signs. So when I'm teaching astrology, and when I'm in my classes and courses and consultations, I often like to bring in the complementary zodiac sign, what we're talking about. If Uranus is moving into Gemini, which is about here and there, us and them, this and that, Uranus and Gemini, the complement zodiac sign is Sagittarius. So we bring in a little bit of Sagittarius to balance out some of this frenetic energy. Sagittarius is a zodiac sign that says, I'm focused on my goal and I'm going there. We need to take care of business. I'm focused on my goal. I let go of the distractions. oh, it's the fire horse year. And in the year of the fire horse sometimes needs to put on these blinders so they can focus on the goal. With Pluto in the zodiac sign of Aquarius, the complementary zodiac sign is Leo. Leo is the lion, and it's the heart. So while there's these radical conversations about progress with technology and communication, the gift of the timeline actually is also about returning and coming back to our heart-centeredness. How are we connected more and more in our authentic humanity through the heart? Okay. So this is so funny because the screen is misbehaving. That is fine. I promised I'd share with you a brief story, and it's relevant to the timeline that we're talking about. Literally in the end of January, and it was the day that Neptune moved back into early degrees of Aries, is when the fire happened here at the house. And I lost 90% of my belongings. What was amazing to me in the weeks that followed was the amount of community support. Friends and colleagues of mine for years, friends from high school, college, massage school, people showed up. People really, really authentically showed up. And I'm sharing it in the spirit of how much it touched me personally, that there were even people that I didn't know who showed up and offered me things that I needed and financial support at the timeline. And I think this was a huge reflection for me personally in my own life for what can occur or what may be occurring in the bigger picture, that even though we might know someone or you are aware of what's going on in the world events over there, that yes, we are all connected and that we can help and support each other. All right. One of the things I first do when I move to a new place is I want to get to know my neighbors. All right. That's a Uranus and Gemini thing. Gemini thing is the neighborhood. Let's get to know our neighbors. And Aquarius, Pluto's down in Aquarius. Aquarius is about friendships, friends, groups, associations. Who are you connected with on the intimate level and otherwise, right? We can have many, many depth of human relationships, okay? What I see going forward with this Uranus-Pluto story, we're going to be connecting with each other in unknown and unprecedented ways, all right? I did look back over some time, and the UN, the United Nations, was created in 1945, Uranus in Gemini. The United States of America, the American Revolution in 1976, and the French Revolution in 1789 was a symbol of when, Pluto in Aquarius, the themes are about revolution and democracy. So I really would like to invite you to consider, again, the gift of astrology is the phrase, as above, so below, or as on earth as it is in heaven. We're embracing and embodying these cosmic choir as the planets and points are moving into these new zodiac signs. They are igniting in us, they're singing to us. If we have ears to listen and eyes to see, they're igniting this new power and potency and potential for us to connect with each other in hopefully more heartfelt ways. So I did leave some information here. Maurice, it went to the hosts and panelists. communications section, if you don't mind cutting and pasting it to go out to all of our listeners and participants. My friends, you can see there, I have an additional gift for you, which is the Year of the Fire Horse, where I go into more detail on this cosmic conversation, as well as the symbolism of the Neptune and Saturn in Aries. All right. For those of you who'd like to drop in, there's a quick, easy link there. You can find it easily. And I invite you to stay connected. If you'd like to show support, I'm giving a discount now through May 1st, another turning point in the wheel of the year. The code is called Renew. And that's where you can reach me on the calendar for connection in person with sessions. So I hope you all have a wonderful start to this new timeline and keep connected in the many different ways, online, in person, and otherwise in 2026 and beyond.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And recharging your battery. That's
Recharging battery.
part of Pluto in Aquarius.
I wanted to complete on one note, Maurice, if I have a little moment here. There was a story that I shared in my newsletter, which I send out just once or twice a month. But as the fire was happening and I walked toward the fire, I walked toward it, even with all of the emergency vehicles around. The book that was on the ground right outside of the window was Sri Yukteswar's The Holy Science. This book was on the ground, okay? I mean, I had hundreds of books in my house, and this is the face that was staring at me. This is Yukteswar's face. And I bring it up in part because of the theme of the book is about the integration of the Western and the Eastern thoughts, all right? They're talking about the scriptures of Christ, and they're talking about the yogic scriptures and how it's really all one, all right? The theme of the book is about the oneness of spirit and spirituality. And as Uranus is moving into Gemini, remembering it's like we're integrating East and West, right and left brain. How can we bring these ideas together more and more? It's something that really touched me deeply, and I reread it recently. So thanks again for having me.
Amazing synchronicities. And yes, neighbors, when we look at what's going on, we hope Uranus will bring more connection and not fighting with neighbors, but reaching out. All the best to you on your journey, and I'm sure there's going to be new chapters on Zoom as well. And Hanna, blessings to you and welcome on this panel. We're excited to introduce Hanna Tanajura, a professional astrologer based in Chicago, originally from Brazil, from tropical Brazil. So she graduated from the River Star Evolutionary Astrology Diploma Program, which everyone should graduate from, if you ask me, and serves now also as an assistant teacher and mentor for students. She's presented at the Omega Institute and continues to grow, expand her practice, share ancient wisdom of astrology. She's available for consultations and programs at her website, hannatanajura.com. And today you will be sharing insights about astronomy and astrology. So that is very relevant for our equinox celebration of Astrology Day. I'll leave it to you. I pass the mic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maurice. I am not able to share my screen because
Okay,
someone else is
today's the
sharing.
day.
Let me
So
try.
try now, because I'm not sharing any longer.
Okay. Thank you, Maurice. Just a quick shout out to you for bringing us all together. Thank you. Thank you to the great presenters today and tomorrow. A really awesome lineup. And a very warm welcome to those joining live, those who stayed all the way until my turn. So thank you for being here. Thank you for those tuning into the recording later. Happy equinox. And if you're here, it means you like astrology, right? So my question for you is, did you know that not so long ago, astrology and astronomy were actually one single field? They were not separate. So this is what I want to explore with you today. The plan is to do this in 3 parts. I will speed things up for the sake of time. I'm going to do thousands of years of history in 15 minutes, so bear with me. It will be a simplified overview, but hopefully helpful and insightful. So first part, we're going to look at their shared origins. So a little bit of story time, how they developed together, astrology and astronomy back in the ancient world, how it's, it's already been mentioned. Secondly, we're going to look at the split. We're going to look at the split and why these two separated. Now, what were the historical, cultural, philosophical forces that helped to separate them? Because if you don't know this, this separation is actually quite recent. For the great majority of our history, of human history, astrology and astronomy walked hand in hand. And then the third part is a question that I have for you that I certainly don't have a full answer for it, but I'm hoping it's good food for thought, which is how and why might we begin to bridge this divide? And what would it look like if astrology and astronomy were once again connected? So, origins. One thing that we all share, right, regardless of where we come from, the color of our skin, the way we look, is that all of our ancestors looked up to the sky. Now we have some Swedish in the room, we have Africa, we have South America. All of our ancestors, since the very beginnings of time, human beings were looking up to the sky, to the heavens with wonder, right? So we can think about how before even spoken language, before there were temples, houses, before there was, there were written words, the sky was really our first map, our first clock, the source of all the great myths. So in the ancient world, astrology and astronomy were one and the same. There was no division. There was no separation between the scientific and the sacred. So when we're talking about the ancient world, we're speaking about civilizations like Babylon, Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, India, China. So observing for our ancestors, observing the sky was a scientific activity, but also a spiritual practice. So the heavens were studied and the heavens were interpreted. And just, I know you know this, but just as a reminder, they didn't have smartphones, right? They didn't have computers. So in a way, they're much more connected than we are. So they spent long periods simply looking up, paying attention to the movements of the sky. So the celestial bodies, the planets, the stars, the eclipses were known, were understood as great messengers, divine messengers, and really bringing our cosmic clock, right? Connecting us to the cosmic clock. So I want to bring you to ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt, one of the most amazing things about their culture is that they would build their temples in alignment with particular stars and constellations because their focus was to track the light of the stars and the planets and the sun and the moon. How incredible is that if we're building our houses in alignment with the sky, right? Another one is Mesopotamian. So we had these incredible, they're called the ziggurats, right? They're temple observatories, and the astrologer priests would go up there. They would study, they would record the sky. The astrologer priests were highly respected people in the community because their role was essential in the well-being of the society, of the community, the health of their communities. So over the centuries, our ancestors gather a lot of data, right? They would cover the cycles of the rivers, like the Nile, the Euphrates, like the harvest, the natural events, the earthquakes, the political events. They would take note. So in a way, it's very much like a science experiment, like generation after generation, they would observe the sky, record, and compare the patterns between what was going on down here and the celestial movement. So they're the ones building our first databases, our first cosmic databases, right? So you have both an empirical scientific practice, but not without meaning, right? So it wasn't just like the sky is a machine, the sky is a messenger. I want to bring very quickly, there's so many like key players in our history that I want to bring up, and one of them is Ptolemy. If you've never heard of Ptolemy, he was a 2nd century scholar, and he was one of those guys who did everything. He was a mathematician, he was an astronomer, he was an astrologer, and his work, you know, his books ended up becoming the foundational texts for ancient astronomy and in classical astrology. And by the way, the church, the Catholic Church, promoted his work, right? I'll get to that in just a second. But just some examples here that I want to show you, just to show you how our ancestors were paying attention to the skies, and right away in human history we see them in the creation. So this is the Lascaux cave in France. This is a very famous, called the Hall of the Bulls, and if you look at the cluster of dots above its shoulder, researchers believe this is the Pleiades, the 7 sisters. If this is true, this is the oldest visual, one of the oldest at least, visual references of a constellation. Another one is the Babylonian star maps. These are tablets, and in these tablets, they're written in cuneiform, but you see a list of the constellations, you see a list of star risings, planetary movements. So these are the earliest systematic star catalogs that ended up becoming foundation to what will later become Western astrology. How cool is that? The Stonehenge, Margareta already mentioned the Stonehenge, how it's, you know, this massive stone circle that pretty much is aligned, carefully aligned with the summer solstice sunrise and the winter solstice sunset. Another really cool example, this is the mosaic of Sepharis. I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but this is in an ancient synagogue in what is now Israel. And you see all the 12 signs surrounding the sun god Helios in a chariot. So really just to show how astrology was integrated in all the culture spaces, all the religious and culture spaces of the time. And this one is my favorite, Dendera Zodiac. This is in Egypt. This is incredible because it's on the roof of a temple called the Temple of Hathor. And this is really sophisticated because what they did was that they brought together Egyptian cosmology, Babylonian and Greek astronomy and astrology knowledge all in one. So it's really like they created a cosmic map on the roof of a temple. Really cool. Of course, the original one is not there anymore. There's a replica, but it's now the original one is in the Louvre in Paris. So moving on, going quick here, moving on to the Middle Ages. What's going on with astrology in the Middle Ages? It has a central place in the intellectual and the spiritual life, especially in Europe and the Islamic world. So it was very much accepted. It was considered actually a very serious science, not just mystical woo-woo or speculation. Astrology was taught in universities. Imagine that, in Oxford, in Paris, in different universities in Italy. And it was studied alongside medicine, philosophy, and astronomy. So some of the uses were, as I mentioned, in the medical field. So it was very common for doctors, physicians to study natal charts, to diagnose and treat illnesses and prescribe treatment. They would actually study that in university. It was actually a prerequisite for medical training. Kings and queens had card astrologers that, helped them to decide war, marriage, when to crown rulers, etc. And monks and scholars, would track planetary movements to the agricultural cycles, etc. So just a few more pictures here that I want to show you from the times and what has survived. One of the most amazing things are the manuscript and the treatises that contain charts, interpretations, discussions, really showing us all the medieval astrological practices. And they're really beautiful. The most famous one is called the Book of Hours. If you've not seen the Book of Hours before, please Google it. It's so cool. They pretty much were these prayer books that everyone would have. It was for the regular person. And they would have prayers and psalms, and they would have the zodiac signs, the astrological calendar. So they would guide people not only in devotion, not only in their spirituality, but also understanding the seasonal changings, the feast days, etc. So just to show you how astrology and astronomy were just one thing and completely woven into daily life. And one shout out to the Islamic Golden Age, because the scholars, they translated so much from the Greek astrological knowledge and the astronomical texts, and they ended up integrating, bringing innovation in their own astronomy and mathematics into it. Okay, how about the church, right? How about church and astrology? How did it work in those times? A complicated relationship. So what was accepted was what we called natural astrology. So it was the knowledge that the idea that the celestial bodies could influence the physical world. So the weather, the natural rhythms, the tides, agriculture, the body, medicine, right? That was understood as God divine order. So it was very much used in that practical and religious context, timing festivals, advising rulers, things like that. One great example is the cathedral in Chartres in France. So you see there the symbols, the astrological symbols in the architecture. The stained glass is beautiful. It has all the 12 zodiacal signs. So just to show, it was very much a part of the spiritual life as well. But what was not accepted, what was rejected, it was what we call judicial astrology. So that's when you use astrology to predict future human choices and the fate of our soul, because that automatically challenged divine providence, right? If the stars were the ones determining our destiny, that automatically undermines God's sovereignty. Another shout out is Thomas Aquina. He was one of these major voices at the time. He was very much in the Catholic philosophy, and he was the one who brought the middle path. He was saying, yes, the stars can influence the body and can describe tendencies, but human beings must remain responsible for their choices. So he's a key player in helping to bridge religion and astrology instead of separating them. The Renaissance, right? That great rebirth of knowledge, cultural awakening. During the Renaissance, astrology flourished. It was used by many, many people, physicians, the rulers, the scholars. Popes had astrologers, artists. Astrology was still very much in the universities. And many of the great thinkers of the Renaissance were practicing astrologers, like, for example, Kepler and the great Galileo, of course. In my research, I found out about someone I didn't know called Tycho Brahe, a Danish nobleman. He was the one who actually did all the astronomical measurements of the planets and the stars before pre-telescope era. And it was his observations that later allowed Kepler to discover the laws of planetary motion. And he was casting horoscopes. He was advising the nobles. He was doing astrology too. So it's very much that age when you have these great thinkers that are bringing all these mathematics, astronomy, astrology, deeply intertwined and working together. So what the heck happened, right? How did astrology and astronomy separate? Well, two turning points here, major turning points. The first one was the Reformation. If you don't remember history class, the Reformation was this big revolt, this big thing that happened against the authority of the Catholic Church. So the reformers introduced the idea that only what's in the Bible should guide faith, not church traditions and not anything that's external, like external systems like astrology. And because, here's the problem, because astrology wasn't explicitly supported in the Bible, it gradually began to be seen as unbiblical and over time demonized. So this wasn't just one day to the next. This wasn't a sudden shift. This happened slowly. So it was, slowly but surely type of thing. So anything that looked pagan, anything that looked like alchemy, divination, it was put in one box and automatically seen as one thing. And this is also during the periods of the witch hunts, right? But there was also an even deeper issue here, because many of the Protestant tradition emphasize God's absolute sovereignty. So the idea that the stars could influence human life felt very, very, very against that. Felt ultimately very threatening, right? If something other than God, who's out there, is shaping destiny. So astrology begun to be criticized as promoting fatalism. So little by little, you're seeing the shift. And the Catholic Church that was using astrology then start to distance itself from astrology, eventually banning astrology altogether. The second turning point was the scientific revolution. So that's when we have the introduction of a new way of understanding the universe, one that's based solely on measurement, observation, mathematical laws, rationalism. So science became focused only on what could be tested, what could be proven, right? So this is what happens during the Enlightenment. This divide between astrology and astronomy deepens even further, right? And astronomy, this is the time that astronomy evolved into the discipline that we recognize today, that's focused on physics and precision and what's very we're able to measure, right? But astrology that works through symbolism and meaning and correlation did not fit into this framework. So it gradually, this was centuries that, astrology and astronomy started to gradually split apart, and astrology lost institutional support. And that's when it started to be labeled as irrational and pseudoscience. So this is modern. This division is modern. But thankfully, astrology persisted, right? Even though it lost favor in the elite, the academic circles, it remained vibrant in folk traditions and mystical traditions contexts. So we have things like the almanacs, folk magic, herbalism. Later on we had the Theosophical Society, right, that helped to bring astrology and science and spirituality together. Another key player is Alan Leo, another pivotal figure in this time, because he was the one who helped to shift astrology focus from fate and prediction to more of a character analysis, spiritual development. So he was another key player in the foundation of psychological astrology. And then we had the New Age movement in the 60s and 70s, right? That reignited public interest in astrology. Another key player was Carl Jung, right? Who used astrology, who saw the birth chart as a symbolic mirror of the psyche. He helped to legitimize astrology with his theories of synchronicity, archetypes, collective, unconscious. This is also when we see the birth of sun sign columns, right, in newspapers and magazines, which brought astrology into everyday life, which is interesting because think about the Book of Hours back in medieval times, how it was part of the daily life. And here we now have kind of a modern way, which is the sun sign columns. And now, of course, we have the digital age, right? So we have the apps and the memes and the softwares and social media, which has made astrology more accessible, more interactive, and at times even viral, for better or worse. I mean, that's a whole other conversation for another time. But going back now to my question in the beginning, we come full circle. I've given you thousands of years of history in little time, but my question is, should astrology and astronomy come back together? And if so, why and why now? I certainly don't claim to have the answer, but here's my 2 cents. To me, astrology and astronomy are brothers, are sisters, they're partners, they're siblings. They're ultimately two ways of looking at our sky, two expressions of the same divine intelligence. And to me, when they're together, we're actually stronger. What we see in human history again and again and again is this tendency to split things apart into opposites, right? We have science in one side, we have spirituality in the other one. We have mind versus the soul. We have reason and intellect versus meaning. Maybe part of the human evolution moving forward and what this moment is asking of us is integration. Because when astrology and astronomy split, we all lost something. It was a loss for all of us. Astronomy kept, of course, the precision, the data, the physics, and astrology kept the meaning, right? The symbolism, the psychological insights, ultimately the human experience. So imagine what becomes possible when these two start to really talk to each other. And astronomy helps astrology stay grounded, right? Through observation, through discovery and science, and understanding how the cosmos moves. Whereas astrology brings to astronomy the answer to the question, why it matters. What is the meaning of it, right? How these cycles out there are reflected in our lives down here in our cultures and our histories. So together, to me, they open something much, much bigger, which is a more integrated way of knowing, and that leads to, if there's a more integrated way of knowing, leads to a more integrated way of being. So not just understanding the cosmos, but understanding ourselves within it. So spirit with science, it was something that was mentioned, the holy science, right? It's a spiritual science. So maybe this is not going back to the past, but maybe it's about a deeper sense of remembrance. And what we're remembering is that we're not meant to split in the first place. Like, we're not meant to split intellect and soul. So I believe and I hope that in the future, astrology and astronomy can build bridges again, because imagine a world where astrologers understand astronomy and astronomers are at least curious about astrology. So on that note, I hope this wasn't too rushed. I hope this was insightful. Thank you for taking this journey with me. This is how to find me in the interwebs. Here's all my information, and just want to wish all of you a great new year of abundance and peace and harmony, and may we feel very inspired to co-create a new world together. Thank you. Thank you, Maurice. I'll turn it over to you
Beautiful,
now.
beautiful. Thank you so much. That was very captivating and revealing. And I think, just to address some of the important question, I believe that the split happens because we stop seeing nature as sacred. And we separate nature from God. Like, if you understand that the planets are part of the divine plan, it's not a contradiction any longer. Nothing, we lost that understanding that everything is intentional, that if planet is there, it's not just a mechanical phenomenon, but it's also an intentional phenomena. And as as evolutionary astrologers, we focus on intention, and I think that can be, a link to bridge. And Uranus is in Gemini, so here is to building bridges. Thank you so much, Hanna. This was fabulous and well done. So thank you for staying with us. We're going above time because it's so interesting that it's hard to put firm boundaries on these exciting presentations. I'm going to share what I wanted to talk about today. And, it weaves into a lot of what was said earlier, understanding the times we're in and the role of astrology as we move into a new world. Not only are we speaking about the technology that is changing, the acceleration of everything, this kind of Uranian paradigm and Aquarius age where everything is processed faster. We go from Paris to London, from New York to London in less time, and we compute our charts in less time. And what Hanna was saying, that people had to spend a lot of time observing, which creates a completely different emotional and visceral experience of study. As everything goes faster, our attention span is much, is reduced and narrower. And yet, we gain also incredible capacities because speed allows us to gain distance. The faster we go, the further we can go. So there's a trade-off. And I want to explore how astrology can be part of a revolution. We speak about the internet revolution and the the scientific revolution and the smartphone and the AI revolution. And I suspect that will be a time, I'm not sure exactly when, but will be a time where there will be an astrological revolution that will transform the world. Maybe astrology will not be the only component, but to go back to Hanna's point about the split between astrology and astronomy, part of the reason is that there's no scientific explanation of why astrology works. There are theories, there are speculations, and we understand the spiritual aspect of it, but we don't understand the mechanics of it. Why is a planet further away, and Pluto is even smaller and farther, and yet it's obviously very, very effective, powerful. So we don't understand those missing point. And so part of the astrological revolution will also be a revolution of physics. The effort to explain why astrology works will create a paradigm shift in science. And maybe astrology will not be the main motivation initially, but it will be part of the deciphering of why it works. And if we understand why it works and the laws of synchronicity and the laws of intention and the cosmic order, then science becomes, a completely different animal. And so that is exciting. And I think that even in our lifetime, we've seen immense change when it comes to the revival and the uses of astrology. And on this note, I want to go back together and look into some of the uses of astrology. I mentioned earlier how astrology is a gift, and I mean it. It's a tool, it's out there, it's available. And part of it is completely natural because planets, we didn't create them. They're just there. They're just spinning. We just observe and track them and understand intentional connection to what's happening to us. And yet there are also other components, such as why are the signs equal in size, right? Why did we decide to split the path of the sun into 12 parts and not 10 and not 25? Why does it work this way? Because we see it work, but we don't always understand why it works. So everything in life is 13 and 12 and sevens. These are sacred ratio and numbers. We have 5 fingers, 5 extremities. We have 12 lunation, 13 lunations. So the 12-13 is even a debate in astrology. Is there a 13th sign? No, it's 12. That's funny in some ways, how it reflects natural, I would say, natural order. But if we look back, imagine the role of astrology, where you go to a reading and you can get insight about your life. Not only understand yourself, but also track what is coming up. The same way we can track the weather and we can make some predictions, which are not absolute, but they give us a direction, they give us a sense. We are now going through so much upheaval on a political level, on a social level. So many things are changing rapidly. Astrology provides context. It helps us be prepared. And even if it doesn't prevent an experience, it doesn't prevent the crisis, it helps you go through the crisis because there is intention. Your suffering is not a Russian roulette. You're not going through a crisis because you have bad luck. There is a riddle, there is an order, and we are part of this greater order. So to me, part of the astrological revolution is to give meaning to what seems random. The moment astrology is, I would say, validated or recognized, it suddenly makes immediately everything sacred. Because if astrology works and there is meaning, then everything has meaning. Then I'm not lost in this world. I don't feel alienated for no reason. There is a reason behind everything. And I will say personally, this was a life-saving experience for me, because in my own little world, I was lost and then I was found. And astrology is my savior in the sense that it provided meaning and order to what was otherwise chaotic and painful. So imagine that on a larger scale. Imagine that as a way to help mental health. So I'm going to take you back to some of the magic of astrology. Let me know if you can listen. So I'm going to share this video that was recorded in September. Between October and November, we'll see a lot of shakeups in Israel. And, eclipses are times where leaders are eclipsed. It can also be a time where the leader goes through a personal change. So will this empower him, or will this delete him from the map? Let's wait and see. But it's certainly going to be a turning point, and it's extremely precarious for him. He's basically walking on not eggshells, but coal, coals on fire. So it's extreme. Something will happen. And I'm talking about the eclipse, but Mars all along will go through all his Libra planets. As I'm releasing this video, Mars is just on his Mercury in Libra, and it soon will get on his Neptune nodes, until it squares Pluto on his Sun. All this happens as in the chart of Israel, Pluto just moved into the 4th house. So the 4th house has to do with internal matters, internal politics. And so Pluto is just starting a journey through the 4th house, bringing all the shadows. And it's going to oppose the moon. So Israel is going through intense internal reforms. And hopefully learn some lessons from that, but it's an extremely fragile time that, in a very Plutonian way, can bring a descent and a resurrection. We talk about the destruction of a temple. So you get the point. What I wanted to show you through this sharing is how valuable astrology can be. And it's not just Maurice Fernandez making a point and speaking, a month ahead of the October 7 battle and the raging war that took Israel into a descent and took the whole region and destroyed Gaza completely. What if the world was listening to astrologers? Because the same thing happened with the war in Iran, with the capture of Maduro. If you followed astrology, I would say most astrologers that I know were talking about February, March, with the eclipse at 28 Aquarius, opposing Israel and Trump's Mars, and rising in Washington to an unavoidable change and confrontation. I mean, not everyone said Iran and a war in Iran, but everyone was mentioning something very precarious. And in the context, Iran was the obvious thing that would unfold. And we also said it's not going to go away quickly, because Mars is on the North Node, because Mars is going to move into Aries, and we can track the cycles. So what I'm trying to get to is to the fact that astrology can help civilization. I don't know if it will always be helpful. I mentioned a change of civilization. I don't know, because it is so powerful, can astrology also be misused? And here are some additional slides that I want to show. But before that, I suspect that the Uranus-Neptune generation is a generation that brings a revival of astrology. I started to my astrology practice during this conjunction. And so there's a whole generation of young astrologers who are born under this conjunction, who are now spreading astrology in ways that we haven't seen in recent history. Today, as a result of this movement, 48% of women, and obviously men as well, age 18 to 49, believe in astrology. You know, these are all statistics that show how astrology is spreading, is developing. Massive growth in apps and online engagement. 15 plus million monthly users on astrology apps. And downloads just increased by 40% just in 2 years. 40%. That's a lot. 10 plus billion TikTok view on zodiac content. 300% growth in astrology posts on Instagram. The biggest exposure increase is digital, not necessarily traditional practice. And that we understand why. Market, you know, the economy of it, the global astrology market is at 13 billion now in 2021, projected to be double that in 10 years. So what does that mean? You know, it means the world is astrologized, but there are still going to be chasm and ruptures and divides, because the revolution of astrology is not only about getting the app and popularizing, you know, understanding how it works. The true revolution is going to be when astrology is integrated, because our consciousness has shifted to understand that everything is intentional and that the astronomy is divine, is meaningful. The risks, imagine if the crazies who are in power will use astrology for devious means. So must astrology be protected? And must astrology be protected from superficial use? I'm not saying that there's anything wrong about, you know, learning about your fortune and, you know, finding out if you get along with Geminis or with Leos. You know, there's always going to be a more entertaining value to astrology, and that is part of the package. It's totally fine. It has its place. But the problem begins when it starts doing harm. These are some examples of astrology prejudice that keeps increasing. What is astrology prejudice? Is that if it becomes popularized, people who are, you know, many of us tend to be very bigoted. And so we can use astrology in bigoted way as well. You know, where Neptune sits in your chart, it represents your prison. You know, wow, great. Thank you for this revelation. And what about, you know, people who are, imagine you are hiring people and you're looking at their chart and you're saying, oh, you have a Mars-Pluto opposition. I'm not hiring you. Right? Where will that go? Is that healthy? Are we misusing astrology? This is another really thing that scares me, is when astrology that is so vulnerable, that touches our greatest sensitivities, where we expose ourselves, is then, you know, exposed to the whole world. This is a lady who posts about her 3-year-old. My daughter has a full 12th house Aries Pisces. How can I support her nervous system? So, you know, this is a question that normally you would ask a professional behind closed doors in an intimate session about your toddler. But it's on Facebook, and everyone who has, you know, read a post on TikTok is answering, and she might have autism. You should check that. 12th house will destroy her. Please take care. Please care about her. How destructive that can get. Any powerful tool can be equally devastating, destructive. And so we, as keepers of the sacred knowledge, Hanna mentioned how astrology was so precious, and astrologers were important figures in their social structure. And that meant that astrology was not so easily accessible to everyone. They would respect it, but they would consult a professional and not take this on themselves. The same way, we know a little bit about medicine, and we know that we have to stay healthy, we have to exercise, we should eat vegetables. Everyone has common knowledge about self-care on a healthy level. But when you need something more serious, you go to a doctor and you pay for a consultation, or you have insurance. You don't make critical health decisions on your own or for other people. And that's why we have certification programs. That's why we have to safeguard the use of astrology and make sure that it's in good hands and it's in good use. And there will be crises. That's part of Pluto being in Aquarius. If Aquarius represents astrology because it represents the sky and our connection to the sky, Pluto also brings the shadow. It also brings the crisis. And it will be an opportunity for all of us to review our blind spots in the astrology community, how we function as a group, as mentors, as, I would say, astrologers, as the modern priest. This is another example. Why do I have no friends? And so here are the replies. You possibly complain too much, can be draining energy-wise because you have a lot of emotions. I mean, this is just random posts. It's not packaged in a way that can land in a helpful and supportive way. Even if you need to be, unpacking difficult news for someone, it needs to be in the safety of trusting relationship between a professional and a client. So here, a midpoint, Saturn, this is someone who says that the Saturn of the United States is squaring his midpoint, and that's why he's lonely. Imagine that. So guidelines, astrology touches on our deepest vulnerabilities. Chart reading should be conducted private. This is why I prevent people, I have my online platform, Astrology Skies. I prevent people from posting personal charts just because of that reason. Get a professional reading. Adequate astrology education is essential. You know how I'm promoting classes, and it's not just my classes and my program. Any system, any institution that provides proper guidance, ethical, considerations, and does supervised practice that actually doesn't just teach you astrology, this is what Saturn means, but helps you as you do readings to navigate left from right, to learn how to unpack things. And that doesn't mean that you're preventing, any difficulty, but you're at least minimizing damage. Because astrology is so precious, because it's so powerful, it needs our care. That also means, we know how AI is using astrology. Hanna was mentioning how, and Kathryn were mentioning how it can be deceiving, that AI actually makes a lot of mistakes and people rely on it. But if we produce free content that AI can choose and can rely on, at least we can improve and raise the bar for the collective pool of knowledge on astrology that's available out there. And so it's crazy that, you know, it's a very Neptunian thing that we have to contribute to the collective pool, and Uranus elevate the quality of that collective pool. But on the other hand, you know, we pay a price for it because AI is taking our jobs. You know, people don't come as often to schedule a reading because they can type it for free. And even though it's half-baked and a lot of it is actually inaccurate, they don't know. And they actually, you know, get a free reading, and money matters. So AI will be part of the revolution. It will help astrology. But like everything in life, there's a trade-off. One of the great uses of AI for astrology is going to be the ability to process statistics. If you input a lot of data and charts, AI is going to tell you, you know, I see in this list of people who develop breast cancer, they all have, you know, 35-degree gap between their moon and Uranus or Pluto. So AI is going to be able to analyze charts and see things on a mass scale that is going to provide additional inputs and reveal things that are not so easy with a naked eye. So there are great uses for astrology, but in this astrology day, you know, we are reminded to be very cautious and to remember the professionalism, to remember to uphold our standards. And as you show up here today and celebrate with us, whether you're listening to the recording or you are live with us, understand that your investment, your dollars support this important industry, support a better quality of astrology. So wherever money goes is where energy goes, and that's where we can have more research, better schools, better trained practitioners, and a better quality of life, ultimately, if we believe that astrology can change the world. So thank you. And I invite you as well to join our retreat coming up, talking about Chiron in Taurus and remedies for a new cycle. The day that Chiron moves into Taurus is going to be the day of this retreat, where we're going to touch on how astrology can describe both the crisis, but it also offers the codes for healing. How does that apply to our charts? Thank you very much. Until tomorrow, we have a new day of speakers tomorrow. It's on donation basis, and all the donation will be split between all the speakers, even those that are today with the free content. So you can go to my website and contribute, support, and enjoy this, what I call sacred knowledge. Thank you.